With just 4 whispered words, a child shattered the illusion of a billionaire's perfect life. In the glittering heart of New York City, inside a hotel where wealth feels untouchable, a maid's 12-year-old daughter noticed something no one else did. He was handsome, charming, and always by the billionaire's side. Yet his touch lingered too long. His smile never reached his eyes. Then came the whisper, a single sentence spoken in a nearly extinct Chinese dialect the girl should never have known. 4 words that stopped one of the richest women in the world in her tracks. He's not who he says he is. From that moment, trust unraveled, and the walls of power began to shake. But who exactly was this man? And how could a child know the truth? A whisper in a language she shouldn't know would change everything. A 12-year-old girl with blonde hair saw what no one else did. The man holding the billionaire's arm was a monster in a tailored suit. The grand, majestic hotel was a palace of modern glass and steel. It rose from the heart of the city like a spire of impossible wealth. Inside, the air hummed with the quiet, confident. The murmur of money filled the hotel lobby. Bellhops with perfect posture glided across the marble floors, and the faint, expensive scent of imported lilies hung in the air. For Laura, a maid, this glittering place was one she cleaned but never entered. Her world smelled of antiseptic hospital corridors and the stale, worried air of a sick room. Every morning she left her mother's bedside to come here, carrying with her the cold knot of fear over mounting medical bills. Cancer was slowly stealing her mother's health, their savings, and their peace of mind. Her daughter Evelyn, 12 years old with pale corn silk hair and eyes like the summer sky, waited quietly in a corner of the lobby. The after-school program was closed, so today she accompanied her mother. A worn history book lay open on her lap, but Evelyn wasn't reading. She was watching. To her, the lobby was a stage and the guests were the actors. She noticed everything: the businessman barking into his phone, the couple laughing as they checked in. Then came the main entrance. Eleanor Chin, one of the wealthiest women in the world, walked through the revolving doors. In her late 60s, her black hair streaked with silver. She wore an emerald silk dress that shimmered as she moved. She didn't just enter the room, she owned it. But Evelyn noticed something hidden behind the dignified mask on her face: loneliness. On her arm was Gregory Dalton, a handsome American with easy charm and a smile too polished. His touch lingered as he guided Eleanor with a reverence that felt theatrical, more performance than love. The anxious hotel manager hurried to greet them, offering the penthouse suite. Gregory's warmth seemed flawless, but Evelyn's sharp blue eyes caught the truth. His smile never reached his eyes. His hand on Eleanor's arm was more like a claim than a caress. Later, while Laura cleaned a room upstairs, Evelyn sat in the hallway with her homework. The door to Eleanor's suite was slightly open. Inside, Gregory spoke on the phone in a low, urgent voice. "The timeline is accelerating. She's more trusting than I expected. The papers are nearly ready. Soon it will all be transferred. She suspects nothing." His laugh followed, cold and sharp, nothing like the charm he displayed in public. Evelyn shivered. She had read about men like him in her history books, smiling predators who preyed on the vulnerable. Her grandfather, once a wartime codebreaker, had taught her to see patterns in lies and silence. She recognized Gregory instantly for what he was. When Gregory noticed her in the hall, his mask slipped back into place. With a warm smile, he pulled a $50 bill from his wallet, telling her to buy ice cream. Evelyn refused politely, her steady gaze never leaving his face. For a brief second, annoyance flickered in his eyes. That was enough. She knew she had to act, even if she was just a maid's daughter with no power in this grand hotel. A few minutes later, Eleanor emerged from the suite alone, heading to the elevator. Evelyn stood walking past her as if only a child wandering the halls. At the last moment, she looked up and spoke in a low, urgent voice, not in English, but in a rare dialect of Chinese. The words were clear. "He's not who he says he is." Eleanor froze. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't just the warning. It was the dialect, a language from her childhood in the mountains of Hunan, one she hadn't heard in decades, spoken only with her long-lost family. Stunned, she asked how the girl could possibly know such words. Evelyn repeated, steady and fearless. "He will take everything from you. Trust me." Then she walked away, leaving Eleanor trembling in the silent hallway. The billionaire's polished world tilted off its axis. Memories of her village, her family, and the war she had escaped came flooding back. She had buried that past under layers of steel and silk. But this child had somehow unlocked it. How could a blonde American girl speak her lost language? It made no sense, yet Eleanor saw only sincerity in her eyes. Gregory soon reappeared, his perfect smile back in place. He suggested champagne to celebrate their finalized deal and reached for her arm. This time Eleanor recoiled, feeling the grip of a jailer rather than the touch of a lover. Her voice was unsteady as she told him she needed air. At the front desk, she demanded the manager find the little girl immediately, her usual reserve replaced by sharp authority. The manager, flustered, hurried to obey. Meanwhile, in the staff break room, Laura counted her meager tips, despair weighing heavily on her. Evelyn sat beside her, outwardly calm but restless. When Laura pressed her about what she had said to the billionaire, Evelyn answered simply, "I told her the truth." Laura panicked, warning her daughter that upsetting guests could cost them everything. Evelyn insisted that Gregory was dangerous. Before Laura could say more, the break room door burst open. The manager stood with 2 guards, his face pale with nerves. He announced that Mrs. Chin demanded to see Evelyn immediately and that Laura and her daughter were to leave at once. Tears welled in Laura's eyes. Fired, with no job and no way to pay for her mother's treatment, their worst fear was coming true. It was a death sentence. "Please, sir, she's just a child." "She didn't mean any harm." "I don't care what she meant," the manager snapped. "You're a liability." Then a quiet voice cut through the tension like a blade. Eleanor Chun stood in the doorway, Gregory Dalton just behind her, his arms crossed, eyes cold. She ignored the manager and guards, kneeling before Evelyn. "How did you know my language?" she asked softly. Evelyn closed her book and said, "My grandfather taught me. He was a soldier in China during the war. The villagers called him the Silent Guardian." Eleanor gasped, the name unlocking buried memories of a young American who had once saved her family and village. Staring at Evelyn's blue eyes, Michael Peterson's eyes, she whispered, "He saved my whole village." Gregory's mask cracked. "This is nonsense. They want money." But Eleanor's voice hardened. "She spoke to me in a language you could never understand." Rising, she declared Evelyn and her mother her personal guests, tripled Laura's salary, and dismissed Gregory coldly. In the penthouse suite, Laura was overwhelmed by the impossible luxury, while Evelyn calmly read by the window as if she belonged there. A knock came. Eleanor entered carrying tea, no longer the Empress, but a grandmother. Over jasmine tea, Evelyn spoke of her grandfather's lessons, how truth lies beneath words, in gestures, in silence. "And what did you see in Mr. Dalton?" Eleanor asked. "A hunter," Evelyn replied. "He smiles, but his eyes are always watching, waiting for weakness. He holds on like a leash. Grandpa said men like that are empty inside." Eleanor listened, her doubts about Gregory crashing into clarity. His control, his charm, his isolation tactics, all fell into place. Picking up her phone, she called David, her loyal head of security, ordering a full investigation into Gregory Dalton. Finances, history, secrets, everything. As she hung up, the intercom buzzed. Gregory was demanding to see her. "Tell him I am not to be disturbed," she said icily. Moments later, the suite phone rang again and again, his fury pounding against their fragile sanctuary. In the silence that followed, Eleanor saw Laura's fear and exhaustion. She promised protection, then offered her personal physician for Laura's ailing mother. Laura broke down in sobs, Evelyn wrapping her arms around her. Eleanor joined them, placing a hand on Laura's shoulder. In that moment, wealth and class dissolved. They were 3 women bound by fear, truth, and a common enemy. High above the city, they formed an unexpected alliance, preparing for a storm that was only just beginning. First, his calls went unanswered. Then his keycard was deactivated. When Gregory Dalton tried the elevator, a security guard blocked him with polite firmness. Mrs. Chun was unavailable. His charm, usually unstoppable, hit a wall. Retreating to a bar across the street, he downed whiskey, seething. The mark had been perfect, lonely, wealthy, vulnerable, and the final transfer of her assets was days away. Now everything had been undone by a maid's child. As anger burned, his phone buzzed with a chilling text. "She knows." "Get out," his stomach nodded. If Eleanor had begun digging, the illusions of Gregory Dalton would collapse, exposing Jonathan Hemlock, career con man. Across the street, Eleanor and her allies studied David's security report, projected on a screen. Gregory Dalton didn't exist. Hemlock had left behind a trail of wealthy widows ruined, their money drained, their reputations destroyed. Worse still, a sealed juvenile file tied him to the disappearance of a girlfriend, friends describing him as possessive, manipulative, terrifying beneath his charm. "He's not just a con man," David said gravely. "He's a predator, and he's escalating." Eleanor's eyes hardened. He hadn't just tried to steal her wealth, he had weaponized her loneliness. She thought of Michael Peterson, the silent guardian, who defeated enemies by using their arrogance against them. Arresting Hemlock would be too easy, too public, too small. She wanted precision. "Keep him under surveillance," she ordered. "I'll decide where and how this ends." That night, Laura sat at her mother's bedside in a private hospital arranged by Eleanor, listening to doctors speak of hope. Tears fell, but for the first time they weren't born of despair. Evelyn's strange wisdom, a legacy from her grandfather, had saved them all. Meanwhile, Eleanor prepared her stage, a long-abandoned warehouse on the waterfront, the birthplace of her empire. It was empty but for a heavy oak table and 3 chairs, a beam of sunlight cutting through dust like a spotlight. Hidden cameras and microphones captured every angle. Then Eleanor baited the trap with a single message. "You have caused me embarrassment. I am prepared to offer you $5 million to disappear. Come alone." His suspicion flickered, but greed smothered it. $5 million wasn't his dream haul, but enough to rebuild, enough to vanish and find another victim. Arrogance returned. In his mind, he was already spinning a story, practicing his wounded lover act. When the second message came with the warehouse address, he smirked. She was frightened, trying to buy him off. He would collect, maybe squeeze for more. He dressed in his finest suit, armor of his lies, rehearsing his smile in the mirror. The taxi dropped him at the desolate docks. The warehouse loomed, its windows hollow. A single door stood ajar. He stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence. Then he saw her. Eleanor Chun sat alone at the oak table, illuminated in the shaft of light. No silks, no cashmere, just a dark, austere dress. She was not the Mark he had once imagined. She was the executioner, waiting for his final performance. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back severely, and her face, unadorned by makeup, looked as if it were carved from ivory. She was no longer the lonely, vulnerable widow he had courted, but someone else entirely, a queen, a judge. Jonathan felt unease ripple through him. He had expected to see her lawyers, a briefcase, papers waiting to be signed, but the table was bare save for a single old black-and-white photograph. "Gregory," she said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. It was not the soft, warm voice he was used to, but flat, cold, devoid of emotion. Or should I say Jonathan? I must confess, I prefer your real name. It has a reptilian honesty to it. His blood ran cold. The charming smile he had prepared died on his lips. "Eleanor, I don't know what you're talking about." "I came here in good faith." "No," she cut him off, her tone sharp as glass. "You came here out of greed. The same greed that has guided every pathetic, parasitic step of your life. Did you truly think me so foolish, so blinded by your cheap theatrics, that I would not look into the man I nearly married?" She rose slowly, regal, her presence expanding to fill the space. "I built an empire in this city from nothing. I have faced corporate raiders, hostile governments, treacherous partners. I have survived liars, cheats, thieves far more dangerous than you. You are nothing but an amateur, a vulgar predator, and I am ashamed that my loneliness blinded me to you even for a moment." Jonathan's pulse spiked. He began edging back, searching desperately for an exit. "This is crazy, you're crazy," her voice thundered, shaking dust from the rafters. Was Mrs. DeBose in Palm Beach crazy? Or the Contessa de Veres in Italy? Or the businesswoman in Chicago? I know all their names, Jonathan. And I know all of yours. From the shadows, 2 figures stepped forward, Laura and Evelyn. Laura's fear was gone, replaced by quiet resolve. Evelyn's gaze fixed on him, unreadable yet unwavering. Jonathan's face twisted, civility dissolving into raw malice. "You!" he snarled at the girl. "This is your fault." Eleanor moved between them. "No, Jonathan. This is your fault. You chose this path, and now you will face its end." He barked a harsh laugh. "What will you do, old woman? Call the police? That scandal would drag your name through the mud." Eleanor shook her head with calm contempt. "You still don't understand. I no longer care for such things. I come from a world where honor and justice are all that matter." She lifted the photograph from the table. It showed a young American soldier with kind eyes, surrounded by Chinese villagers, a little girl holding his hand. This was my father, Sergeant Michael Peterson. He saved us. He taught me you do not allow evil to flourish. You confront it, and his granddaughter reminded me of that lesson. At her signal, the warehouse door slammed shut. From the shadows emerged grim-faced men. A ruined investor, the son of a homeless widow, the brother of a woman in Palm Beach. Victims of Jonathan's deceptions, each flown here by Eleanor, each burning with memory. He was trapped, the hunter, now the prey. They surrounded him in silence, their eyes not cold but filled with grief, rage, and loss. One by one they stepped forward. Arthur Benson raised a trembling hand, voice raspy. My wife Sarah worked 40 years as a nurse. You stole everything. She died of the stress. This is her face. He held up a photo. Another man pointed, shaking. My mother is in a coma because of you. My sister saw you push her. She was too afraid to speak, until now. Testimonies rained upon him, each word another nail in the coffin of his lies. Stolen inheritances, vanished savings, shattered futures. Jonathan, master of words, was mute. For the first time, powerless. Eleanor's gaze was surgical, devoid of pity. Laura clutched Evelyn's hand, terrified but resolute, needing to see this monster destroyed. Evelyn's eyes were calm, absorbing the living lesson of justice and consequence. Silence fell when the last victim spoke. Jonathan's ragged breathing echoed in the vast hall. This is your reckoning, Eleanor declared. A briefcase was opened, revealing files, not money. Evidence of every crime he had committed, ready for authorities. You will be convicted, you will die in prison, unless... She slid a confession across the table with power of attorney to liquidate his assets and repay his victims. Your alternative is obscurity, a new identity. A laborer's life under watch, one lie away from prison. His bravado crumbled. Shoulders slumped, hands trembling, he signed his true name. Eleanor nodded. David's man led the broken predator away. Then Eleanor turned to the victims. You will be made whole. I cannot restore the years or the trust, but I will restore your security. Their silent nods of gratitude said more than words. When all had gone, Eleanor, Laura, and Evelyn stepped into the late sun. The air was clean, the world lighter. Laura breathed deeply. Evelyn squinted into the light. Eleanor looked down at her. Your grandfather would have been proud. Evelyn smiled gently. He would have been proud of you, too. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt something warmer than wealth or power. Connection, family, protection that no empire could buy. Let's go to the hospital. Let's go see your mother. As they drove away from the decaying waterfront back toward the glittering city, it was clear that more than just a criminal had been dealt with. A new alliance had been forged. A lonely empress had found purpose, a struggling mother knew hope, and a little girl with the eyes of a silent guardian had shown them that the quietest voice can speak the most powerful truth. 3 months later, autumn sunlight filtered through the bay window of a sunlit house in a quiet suburb. The scent of baking bread and fresh paint lingered in the air. It was Laura and Evelyn's new home, not a palace, but a kingdom, a place of safety and peace bought by a woman who had become an unlikely benefactor and friend. Laura moved about the kitchen with lightness. Fear and debt were gone. Her mother's laughter floated from the sunroom where she worked a crossword, her recovery from new treatments nothing short of a miracle. Laura knew it was a miracle born from a whisper in a forgotten language. No longer a maid, Eleanor had offered her a position managing a new charitable foundation that provided assistance to families bankrupted by illness and education for gifted children of low-income backgrounds. Laura, who had long battled healthcare and social service systems, was uniquely prepared. She had found her calling not in scrubbing floors, but lifting others. Evelyn thrived in a special school that nurtured her sharp mind and deep questions, though she remained the same quiet, observant girl, still preferring history books to parties, still seeing the world with her grandfather's clear eyes. Eleanor visited often, shedding her corporate armor at their door. With them, she was not Mrs. Chun, but simply Eleanor, sipping tea and talking of life, hopes, and children, savoring a joy wealth had never bought. She had found a new family. In Laura, the resilience of women she grew up with. In Evelyn, the legacy of the man who saved her village and the promise of the future. One Saturday, Eleanor watched Evelyn sketch maps of ancient battlefields. Your grandfather could have kept his head down, but he chose to risk everything for strangers. That's what you did, Evelyn. You saw me, not my money, and you chose to speak. Evelyn looked up, serious. Grandpa said we're all connected. What happens to one person happens to us all. Courage is remembering that. Laura's eyes filled with tears. She realized power was not money, but truth and courage. At the Foundation's first gala in the majestic hotel ballroom, Eleanor, regal in sapphire blue, spoke not of numbers, but of a soldier called the Silent Guardian, of ordinary courage against extraordinary evil. She looked toward Laura and Evelyn. Heroes are not always in grand places. Sometimes they are a maid saving her family. Sometimes, her gaze rested on Evelyn, a 12-year-old girl brave enough to whisper the truth. Applause filled the hall. Evelyn did not smile, but her eyes glowed with quiet light. In that room of wealth, she was the richest. Later, on the penthouse balcony, she asked softly, "Do you think the bad man is okay?" Eleanor looked at the distant lights. "He lives now without lies. For him, that is the harshest prison, but maybe his only chance at something real. You didn't just save me, Evelyn. Perhaps you saved him too." Evelyn nodded, accepting. For her, justice was balance, not punishment. Their story would never be public, becoming one of the city's hidden histories. But through the Foundation, its impact would ripple outward, changing countless lives. It proved the most profound changes often begin not with a bang, but with a whisper, a quiet truth in a forgotten language, spoken by someone brave enough to listen.